Good evening and welcome to the first of two Inside Government programs tonight for the fall 2021 semester here at Cayuga Community College and broadcast on Spectrum, Verizon Fios, and the Auburn Regional Media Access, better known as ARMA, as well as Win 89.1, the college's radio station. I'm your host, Guy Cosentino. Now that we have finished with our forums for Campaign 2021, and it is about 7 o'clock, so you have about 2 hours to go if this is Tuesday night to go vote, but you can do that after the next two shows. We will return for the next 2 weeks with our regular program for Inside Government Beyond the Front Page for the remainder of the fall 2021 semester. Tonight we've invited Auburn Superintendent of Schools, Jeff Pirozzolo. I think the winner right now of the most guest appearances, the second Jeff who will be in the second show will be runner-up, to give us an update on the Auburn School District as it returned back to full-time instruction in September. The last 2 months have been busy for the district, including trying to finish off some capital projects at each of the district's 5 elementary schools, dealing with the Delta variant and what may be a mandate from Albany to have all students vaccinated, as well as closing out the discussion on the renaming of Auburn High School, and of course last week seeing a recent school board member resign. Welcome back.
Well, thank you for having me. It's awful late, though.
It is. You
usually I'm in earlier.
We do, but we had a lot of candidates this year. We did a lot of forums.
I thought you forgot about me, so I'm glad to be back on.
And we'll have you back in February 1st on. So, welcome back. How's you're a little over 2 months into the school year academically, as well as you've had staff back just before Labor Day. How's it going?
It's another roller coaster of a year. Great thing, our kids are back in the doors. So, that's the major piece that we wanted to ensure, is to get our kids in the door and keep those doors open. But still a lot of COVID cases, a lot of quarantining. We've had over 200 COVID cases since the first day of school. So between staff and students. And we've quarantined hundreds and hundreds of children this year. But again, we're still going. So they're declining right now. This week and last week, we've seen a decline in numbers, which we're very thankful for.
Yeah, but you had Halloween 48 hours ago, and that
yeah.
You would expect a spike with Halloween.
There's going to be a little bit of a spike. Thank goodness, though, we were outside.
Right, it was a nice night.
The kids were outside, so I think that's going to be helpful. Again, we got Thanksgiving and the holiday season's coming. So,
but you don't think you'd go to full lockdown again?
No. I think for this year the worst is over. I'm really hopeful of that.
So speaking of numbers, so every Friday night you send out a note to parents. I'm assuming it's to all parents,
Yep.
Giving them by school how many faculty or staff.
Yeah.
And how many children. So at 200 cases, are you closing full classrooms at any time?
Yeah, we've got a couple of elementary classrooms that are closed right now. Again, the reasoning is our staff is really good. We know that our students have to be at least 3 feet or greater away from each other so that we don't have to quarantine them. So we try to set up our classrooms that way. But for adults, it's 6 feet. So, some of our elementary classrooms, it's impossible for our teachers to stay that far away.
And you're rolling out Chromebooks right now, and you're going to try to get everybody before the holidays to have a Chromebook in case you do have to do remote classrooms, not schools, but classrooms, correct?
Correct. And it's easier if kids have to quarantine if they're already assigned their Chromebook so that they have that home with them. So we've already deployed, we started at the high school, 9 through 12 is done. We've done 7th and 8th grade, and this week we did 6th grade and 5th grade. Okay. And then we're going to be looking at rolling out to 4th grade as well.
I know 200 is 199 too many cases, but are you surprised with what occurred in the late summer with the Delta variant, and also that we don't have 5 to 12-year-olds vaccinated? The numbers aren't even higher.
I am and I'm not, because other school districts around us have very low numbers of COVID cases compared to what we have.
So why are yours higher?
More children, more staff, more community, more involvement, more activities. I think there
could it be spacing as well, because many have been able to spread out into other properties they may have discontinued. Most likely right now the district continues to kick itself that doesn't have West Middle.
Correct, yes.
Right.
And that would be very helpful right now because we could have spread our elementary schools out more.
Well, you would have been back to school earlier.
Correct. Yeah, that's true. Last year we would have been in school earlier. But I do think that, yes, there's more space in other buildings throughout our county and lower numbers. So, when you have higher numbers and smaller spaces, those are going to happen.
So we're asking all the government officials, what's your staff, what's your vaccination rate among your staff?
We're 91% with our staff for vaccination rate. Every Wednesday, we do mandatory testing for those that aren't vaccinated.
So how do those who are not vaccinated qualify as not vaccinated? Religious exemption, health issues, or they just chose not to get vaccinated?
We never asked. We didn't.
It's not mandated.
It's not mandated. We are not mandated to be fully vaccinated in schools.
So I'm going to come back to wrap around that when we talk about right now the FDA. So obviously CDC and FDA are looking that maybe as early as next week, millions of children 5 to 12 could be vaccinated. First of all, if that occurs, and it does look like it's going to occur, will the district go back to those systems? I just remember as a kid where you just got your polio and your measles and whatever the sugar tablet was. I remember in Genesee Elementary School.
Fluoride.
Yeah, well, it wasn't fluoride back then. That's a whole different issue. And we're not going to get into that one today. But do you see the district doing the shots, vaccine shots, or do you think it's still going to be, whether it's the state fairgrounds or Wegmans or Rite Aid or Walgreens, will the district be administering shots? Are you prepared for that?
Yeah, so I actually just left a meeting with East Hill Medical, and we are going to set up, and again, this will be optional for parents. If parents choose to have their children vaccinated, we want to be able to open it up at every school building in our district to make it easier for parents to be able to do that.
And will you allow parents to come in with their children?
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely. We'll do it after school hours. So we would do it, like right around 3:15, 3:30.
So you're likely not going to mandate it as a Board of Education, correct?
No. We, again...
But there's a new sheriff in town in Albany, and she, as the governor, might. If the district isn't going to do it, are you prepared for the governor to come down? Because it does sound like she might go that direction.
Again, it's going to be her call. It will not be, Jeff Pirozzolo or the Board of Education. We will not be mandating anything.
But you could see, she didn't mandate 13 and up, but 5 to 12 is a big spread here, and she might even go 5 to, if you're in high school, elementary, middle school, or high school, she might go that direction, right?
And well, we deal with it now because shots are mandated, immunizations are mandated for measles, polio, those type of things for students to be in school. And there used to be religious exemptions, but I believe it was maybe 5 years ago.
Well, I know you were on the show 2 or 3 years ago where you were the police officer, for lack of a better term. We were talking about just basic vaccinations.
Correct.
This is all pre-COVID.
Correct.
So it's deja vu all over
Correct.
again.
It is.
On this. Viewer question, if a student gets vaccinated
Yep.
and comes into contact with a fellow student, I'm asking this of Kathleen Cuddy in 2 days, who tests positive, does the vaccinated student have to be quarantined?
No.
Okay, so they will still be allowed in school.
That's been happening all year long. Sports teams, all of our high school. Now, if we're talking elementary, the rules haven't come out for elementary, but junior high and high school students, if you come in contact with a contagious, a COVID positive other student, the only way you would have to quarantine is if you have symptoms.
So right now, if an elementary school child has COVID and is sitting next to a child who does not have COVID, the child who's not got COVID is taking the day off. Taking the day off as well.
It's going to be 10 days.
And so that goes to the rapid test. I know you were at the Wednesday morning roundtable last month, 2 months ago now that we're in November. Are you providing some COVID testing now for students?
So, no. Well, we do testing on Wednesdays.
Okay.
So any student that would like to be tested, Wednesdays at the high school, right in the SAC outside the gymnasium, any student that wants to be tested can come in on Wednesdays. That's asymptomatic testing, though.
So is that instant results?
Yes, 15 minutes.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yes.
So if you get that test, you don't have to skip school the next day?
No, the Binex is asymptomatic. You cannot test out of quarantine. So if you're quarantined, and again, the school district, we make the phone calls for quarantine, but the quarantine actually comes from the guidelines from the health department. Health department tells us what the parameters and guidelines are. We follow those. Once we call those students and put them into quarantine according to the guidance of the health department will follow up with those families as well.
And they're not let back in?
They cannot test out with a negative COVID test.
Okay.
We are asking for that to happen, and I know that Kathleen is working on that. She met with superintendents last week. I don't think they're at that point right now, but they're looking at a test out like after 7 days.
So do you think if you didn't have the rapid test, that would deter parents from getting their children tested if they didn't get the results immediately?
We're not getting results immediately now.
No, but if you go Wednesday night, you get it in 15 minutes.
Correct.
So that's only a small group, correct?
That's a very, very. We're averaging around 15 to 20 people.
Oh, it is that small. Okay.
That's small.
So another viewer question here, clearly from a parent, as you'll find from the tone. When we had so much remote learning last year and many students fell behind, which I don't think you would disagree with in many cases.
Absolutely not.
Why are you still doing staff development days as you did last Friday and having early dismissals such as you are on the 19th of this month? Why wouldn't we just want students in school as much as possible?
And that's a great question, and we do want kids in school as much as possible. But there's also contractual obligations that we have to follow. So, we do have to follow contracts, our teachers' contracts, our administrators' contracts. Those are built in. So we do have to do professional development. We did half days for parent-teacher conferences. So those are sort of built in. But staff development, we also have to do staff development to keep our teachers up to speed with what's going on as well.
And one last, maybe for now, COVID question. Are all your sports programs up and running again?
They are up and running. We've had to take a couple steps back. We had to postpone or cancel a football game. And it wasn't just it was mostly COVID related.
But you also had some students
who
who
were
injured.
Injuries as well, and we had, I think, a couple of soccer games as well. That was due to COVID. Again, kids quarantining.
So let's. I want to shift. Last week you had a resignation of Joseph Shepard. He's the former board president. Mm-hmm. Was this a surprise to you?
It was. Yeah, we found out that day.
Do you know why he resigned?
For educational opportunities.
Okay. So he's working in another district right now, correct?
He's in Union Springs, yes.
So the board can usually fill a vacancy by I think I'm counting 4 ways. Correct me if I'm wrong. You can call a special election. You can interview candidates, pick somebody from there. You can choose from the last runner-up in the most recent election, or you can leave the position vacant till next May.
Correct.
Those are the 4.
Or they could just flat out pick somebody if they wanted to.
Okay. So there is, first of all, my question is this. This happens quite often. Mm-hmm. Why is there no set procedure so that if somebody resigns between now and September 1st, you do X? If it's September 1st to February 1st, it's Y. And if it's after that, it's Z, which is most likely not fill the vacancy.
Correct.
The district, this isn't something that occurs in this district on a rarity. This happens almost every cycle. I would say every 2 years this happens.
Yeah, and it does. It's because people live lives, right? And things change.
But,
right.
So why not have a procedure?
I absolutely agree. They should have procedures. I believe the last time that we had a board member that stepped off, I believe they all ran uncontested. So we didn't have a list to go to.
Right. So this year, am I correct on this? The runner-up, the 4th runner-up last time is former legislative chair Pat Mahunik.
Correct.
By 6 votes.
Yeah, something like that.
And
yeah.
6 votes to the next person.
Correct. And then 1 vote. Yeah, it was very, very close.
So what do you think this current Board of Education is going to do? And I ask this on the context, not secret. You only had to look at July. you had a split board when it came to appointing Mr. Phillips as your board president. You had to wait for a board member to show up at a board meeting because it was 4-4. So that tells me that it's not the most solid. It may be a cohesive group, but there are splits or fissures in there. So who comes on, who comes off, changes things. What's this board looking to do at this stage?
So we didn't even have a discussion. I think some of the board was caught off guard at the last board meeting. So I do believe at the next board meeting they're going to have discussion.
Are you going to make a recommendation?
Yeah, if they ask me, I do have my recommendation.
Okay, I'll ask you. What's your recommendation?
Well, and again, you know, I always go out, Guy, I always say we do what the community wants. You know, I think it's important that we continue to listen to the community, you know, whether it's budgetary or new programming. We want a lot of community input. Again, I think there's two ways of looking at it. You look at a special election so that the community gets their input, or again, you can look back at last year's result because it just happened last May.
And the controversy over a special election has always been cost in the past.
Correct.
That is not an issue, and we'll get to that.
You
have funds available.
It's not the cost. It's the time.
It's the time.
And the work that's involved in it.
So let's deal with two other items that have come up. Let's deal with last week as well. So the board voted last week to stop the process of looking at renaming Auburn High School after whether it's Harry Tubman or somebody else. Did they need to take a formal vote?
You know what, again, I think it was because the board was listening to the community and the community was still asking the questions. Where are we with this process? No, I don't think they had to do that.
But this was to bring it to closure.
I think that was just to bring it to closure.
So there was a poll done. This was not a Quinnipiac poll. It was not a scientific poll. What were the results of the poll that was run by the district earlier in the year on this?
So I did two polls.
Okay.
I polled our high school students and I polled the community. And they both were right at 80% in favor of keeping the name the same, Auburn High School. We were maybe a little bit over 80% with our high school students and maybe like 79.8% with the community.
So one of the criticisms that you've heard for decades has been that the district keeps coming up. It's almost cyclical. Every 10, 15 years it comes up. And the last criticism was, well, if they had dealt with it 15 years ago, we wouldn't be having this controversy now. Is this still unresolved as far as you're concerned, or is it resolved as long as you're superintendent for the next couple of years?
Yeah, and again, I don't know what's going to happen 10, 15 years from now, but, you know, again, the Board of Education has the sole rights to rename any building in their school district. And really, that power and authority is to the Board of Education.
So this could come up next year, it could come up 15 years from now.
It could get brought up any time. I don't think there's ever a way to completely close the issue.
Well, it is if you rename something, then that takes it off the table.
Well, yes.
You'd never rename Seward School.
No, I wouldn't touch on
No.
it. Yeah,
no,
right.
No, but it's tough to. Some schools are named because Casey is because there's a deed restriction on the gift from the
Correct.
family. So that's off the table.
Correct, it is.
But you could change a Wasco. You could.
Correct.
Okay. So speaking of all those elementary schools I just mentioned, you had hoped to be done this summer with a lot of projects at I think all 5 elementary schools. They didn't get done on time, and I know staff couldn't get into Genesee until after Labor Day, which was not the plan. Why?
Two main reasons. One is workforce. A lot of the companies could not get enough employees to do the job, but the biggest issue is materials and supplies. We still have stuff that are still not, they're on back order still.
So are there penalty clauses?
When it comes to things that are unforeseen, like a pandemic, that's not covered under the clauses.
Okay.
A lot of times...
Nor insurance, I'm assuming.
Correct. We knew that there was going to be some items that were going to take until December to finish, like the frontages of some of our buildings, but we didn't know the impact was going to be with piping and heating and microchips. Those type of things are really what's put us behind.
So what's yet to be finished? Go through all the schools right now in whatever order you want to go.
It's pretty much universal because the parts that we're having trouble to get in one building is parts that we're having trouble in all of our buildings. Owasco and Herman are way further ahead than Casey Park and Genesee are. Genesee and Casey Park had a tremendous amount of work done.
Well, I was going to ask in the case of Genesee, I drove by, and I know it was a half day on Thursday. So Thursday night, I happened to be driving in that neighborhood, and about 8:45 in the evening, and I looked up to what would have been my old second grade classroom, and I saw a guy in the window doing construction work. He had a vest on and all that. Are you paying people extra hours, or are these firms paying extra hours to get this stuff done? I just thought it was odd that late at night having somebody doing. I did not call 911 because I didn't think he was not supposed to be in the classroom.
That was built into the plan. We do second shift work.
Okay.
Once kids come back to school, everything gets shifted to second shift work. But we actually do have groups doing first shift work too that's not interfering with the academics or safety of children.
So originally the plan was that you were hopefully going to have everybody out of the buildings construction-wise by Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Is that still the plan?
No, absolutely not. Yeah, no, that's not.
When do you think these things will be finished?
We were planning on the frontage of Owasco and Genesee to be done around the second week in December. We may be going into January. So, again, it really depends on when we can get some of those supplies and materials. We do know this, I can tell you, as far as the chillers, the new chillers going on top of the elementary schools, that won't be done until springtime. Everything will be run, everything will be there.
And most of this is all air quality and hardening of safety issues.
Correct, correct.
So once these are done, is that finish off everything from the bond from a couple of years ago that was in the plan? Or do you still have more?
No, this is really the first major phase of that. Next year is supposed to be the high school. That is going to probably be a 2-year process. We're changing every...
COVID or not.
COVID or not, yeah. Okay. We're going to be changing out every branching pipe that goes from the main pipes to all the univents that goes throughout the whole school. They're completely rusting and breaking. We've had a couple break last week. So that's going to be a very involved project that will be spaced out probably over a 2-year period. We also have Auburn Junior High to do and Seward Elementary to do.
So if your viewers question, I don't know how much they view as much as they saw a tree come down at their elementary school. So these are 3 9-year-olds. I won't say anything because I don't want Mr. Gorney looking out for them. Dr. Gorney will say, why are you asking him questions? So what happened to the large tree that on Thursday and Friday, while school was out, came down?
Oh, I didn't. So just so you know, we are working with Dr. Walter Aikman.
He's an arborist?
Yes, correct. He is doing a strategic plan for the school district. He has been going through and showing us which trees are damaged. We've had quite a few at Herman that were not in great shape that have been removed. And pretty much what we're doing is following this strategic plan over the course of the next 10 years. But we are going to be replanting new trees, local trees, into all of our school buildings. We've already done this work at Owasco. We've replaced some trees, and we've already planted probably 6 or 7 new ones there. We're doing Herman next, and we're going to be continuing to go through the district.
All right. Well, Charlie, Seth, and Sam will be happy to hear that answer. Stay away from Mr. Gorney. So I want to talk about money because you'll be coming back in February, most likely after the governor releases her first budget. But let's talk about foundation aid, because I think lost in all this COVID, lost in all of this money from Washington and Albany to deal with COVID, it sounds like you have had a resolution of the foundation aid issue for Auburn. Am I correct on this?
Do I have a resolution?
No, has it been resolved?
No, it hasn't been resolved anywhere in New York State.
Okay, so the money that you're getting right now that's coming to the district is federal and state aid to deal with only COVID related aid?
No, we did get an increase in foundation aid for this
Okay.
year. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
But also, if you recall, the state came out, the governor's office, New York State Education Department said, within the next 2 years, every school district is going to be fully funded in foundation aid.
So my question is two parts. A, do you believe that?
No, I absolutely not.
Okay.
Yeah. No. I mean, you're talking over $2 billion. And we're.
But next year's an election year, and it's also a redistricting year where everybody wants to pump as much money from Albany to localities.
Right.
So it will clearly be indicated on the second or third week of January with what Governor Hochul puts out.
Correct.
So what is the education department telling superintendents? There's 700 of you.
They're not saying anything right now.
Okay.
As of right now, we're not hearing anything. But again, to me, where does the state come up with an extra $2 billion to fully fund all school districts in New York State? Sometimes what happens is when they promise something like that, something else will hit, like we've got a new aid formula we want to look at. I think there's ways that they can wiggle through that. We were fortunate enough to have an advocacy committee grouping at Genesee Elementary School. We had Senator Mannion and Senator Helming came, and our assemblyman was there as well. And what we did is we worked with Dr. Rick Timms, who's our consultant, and we picked out certain parts of the formula that if they just tweak certain parts of the formula could help not only Auburn but a lot of small city school districts. So it's an easy ask for our senators because we simplified what we're asking for, but that could bring us a couple $1 million more into Auburn.
And we'll have Senator Mannion and Assemblyman Lamatis here next week, and we'll be asking them. So there's no permanent fix right now.
There is not.
So the other issue that is out there is you do have this federal aid coming in. First of all, how much is it?
It's around $13 million over the course of almost 4 years.
So a couple of questions that you've got in on this, and I know this came up at the Wednesday morning roundtable as well. Where's that money going, first of all? What are you using it for?
We used it for air purifiers throughout the whole district. We have 2 air purifiers in every classroom. We have some bigger units in the auditorium and gymnasiums, cafeterias, about $450,000. We've added summer schools for the next 3 years, and we've incorporated that into the money for learning loss. We also hired about $2.5 million worth of new staff, whether it's teachers and teaching assistants, about $2.5 million. So over the course of 3 years, that's going to be, around $8 million of the $13 million. So most of it is on staff.
So let's go back to the staff because that's a viewer question. You put all this new staff in. If you don't get the foundation aid issue resolved, you don't have money to pay these individuals.
And that's a great question. And that is a conversation that I continue to have with our Board of Education. So, yes, this money that we got could be temporary. What I'm trying to do is build it in so that we can continue. Our fund balance, our fund balance is way over right now. We have enough money right now in our fund balance to be able to, we'll have 3 years with this staff, plus probably another 2 years. So this staff could be around for 5 years. Hopefully the foundation aid formula will be fixed within the 5 years to be able to maintain.
So the reason I asked this and follow up on the viewer question is that when we had forums here in the studio, we asked county people, city, they're talking about only capital projects, things that don't have a recurring cost. That does not sound like what the district is doing.
We couldn't afford it because our children have the impact on them, and we need to help get them up to grade level. We've really got to address the learning loss. You can't address learning loss with putting better ventilation in a building. So we need more supports.
Are you optimistic what you'll see from the budget from the governor in
I'm hoping that we're going to start seeing some increasing. The Masto case, which is a lawsuit.
I was going to say some of these have not been resolved, but some of them have been resolved?
Yes. So
not in the state's favor?
No, in the school district's favor. So I think that's going to put a lot of pressure on the government and the governor's office to really take a look at small city school districts because we are all being underfunded. So I think that's going to help us in our case. So, if we don't see a huge impact this year, I think by next year we will see a bigger increase in foundation aid.
So we're going to have you back in the spring. I'm not going to ask you to give an A, B, or C, or D grade to her budget, but we would love to have you back in February to talk about where you are with the budget, and hopefully you will not have many more COVID cases, and you'll know where you are on vaccinations.
That's right. Hopefully we'll be fully open and running as normal. That's what we're hoping for.
Delighted to have you back in the studio.
Thank you.
Now that the forums are over. Our guest has been Auburn Superintendent of Schools, Jeff Pirozzolo, and like I said, we will have him back on as one of our first guests in the new year when we return for the spring semester. We'll be back in just a moment with our second of the two Jeffs. This one would be City Manager Jeff Dygert, who will give us a city update on such things as the new public safety building that was opened up on Thursday, or at least had a ribbon cutting on Thursday, the transfer station that has been created, and where the city is financially. This Thursday, we will have Beyond the Front Page featuring Cayuga County United Way's new Executive Director, Catherine Dennis. She'll talk about her new position, as well as the United Way's 2021 annual campaign that is now underway. And that will be followed by an Inside Government, as we mentioned. Cayuga County Public Health Director Kathleen Cuddy will be in the studio to talk about COVID numbers, the response from the county to COVID, as well as the upcoming flu season, because we want to make sure you're aware. That is always a worry. Next Tuesday, we'll have Auburn Mayor Michael D. Quill, and then Cayuga County Legislative Chair Aileen McNabb-Coleman to give us a city update and a county update, respectively. And then next week, we do finish off with Senator Mannion and Senatorman Lamatis, who will be in here for Albany updates on Veterans Day, which is our last show of the semester. It is now about 7:30 on Tuesday evening. If you have not gone to the polls, you can stick around for the next show with Jeff Dygert, but you have about an hour and a half to go to the polls. If you have not voted, go to the polls and go vote. Before we go, though, we would like to let you know that you can send us your questions and thoughts for future guests to Inside Government or Beyond the Front Page. You can send them to cozguytho@aol.com. I'm Guy Cosentino for Cayuga Community College. We want to thank you for watching. We hope you have a good evening, a great day tomorrow. Come back and join us on Thursday for 2 new shows, and more importantly, be safe and be well.